Welcome to the Obsessively Outspoken Podcast. I'm your host, Remington Sinclair, and today I have a very special guest, Deandra Alaniz.
Perfect. Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me, and I'm glad we finally got an opportunity to get together and talk about some serious topics. Now, before we get started, give the viewership a little bit of background about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm actually from Corpus Christi, Texas. I currently live in Austin, Texas. And so kind of how that transition happened was, born and raised in Corpus Christi, not a lot of opportunity out there, love doing music, love singing. So I didn't really see a lot of expansion out there for me. So I, kind of looked into different avenues and discovered Austin, Texas, live music capital. So I made that move maybe like a month after graduating high school, and not a lot of money to my name. I just kind of, jumped ship because I was just super ambitious to make something happen for myself and for my family. So moved to Austin, attended the Art Institute, and I've been living life and going through a lot of things as, a single Black woman. So it's ultimately what led me here with you today. So I appreciate it.
Tell me a little bit about the singing. Were your aspirations to eventually get signed or be independent, or was that a passion of yours? Oh, okay.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for asking. So, so that's basically the avenue that I was looking for was, I wanted to go to the Art Institute so I could be more independent with learning how to do my own music. So I really wanted to learn the production side. I've had years of singing experience. I was in choir for about 7 years. So I had tons of, knowledge of, my voice, but I really did want to learn the production side. And I think what kickstarted that was I went to a program to Texas or Kingsville University, like 45 minutes out from Corpus Christi, really in the middle of nowhere out down there. And I was having a session with the voice doctor, and she was really, kind of letting me know about my voice and my breathing technique. And she's like, hey, if you want to get into commercial music, these are things you're going to have to work on because engineers are going to charge you a whole bunch of money, trying to really mix in your voice and with your breathing technique and stuff like that. And it just clicked in my head, like, I could do that myself, So I think that's just kind of what led me to that point, from, going to a program to the university I was like, I want to learn how to, kind of be my own engineer, be my own producer. So that's really what led it to that point of just learning that. So I have learned a lot working or kind of going to school at the Art Institute. I've met tons of different artists, local artists that are doing great things. I've had so much privilege working with them and them kind of taking me under my wing and just learning a lot from our different recording sessions and of course just class as well. So yeah. So
do I have to look forward to one day seeing an album on iTunes or Spotify or Pandora? Is it going to get to that point or?
Yeah, I'm still very passionate about music. I think, and we'll get to this, but it's me, again, just kind of being out here trying to figure things out on my own. Because again, left Corpus just on a whim. I didn't have a lot of, resources that came with me, so just kind of really having to figure out things on my own. And I think that just kind of led to, I was just kind of moving in a somewhat naive path, just thinking that I was just going to climb straight to success, but it doesn't really work out that way. So I think that's just kind of what stopped me on a hiatus to really figure out some things for myself financially, mentally, spiritually, just in kind of what I'm looking to get out in the long term. But, still, doing things morally,
Right.
Because I know the industry, you can easily fall into just some bad influence. So that was something that I, was realizing very fast is that I don't want to fall into that. So how can I, build a path for myself financially. I have a strong foundation in that, so I don't have to rely on, other people, possibly wanting to take advantage, and just so I can do things for myself. So right now it's been a pause on, actually production and making music, but definitely still looking to put out an EP, and just really move in that avenue for sure. While I was in school, I did do a track with a local artist by the name Louis Velli. That song has been out for a couple years now on Spotify, Apple Music. You can find it anywhere. It's called Good Vibes. So that's, that'll probably be in a little taste of what you could hear of my voice.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely.
Well, much success to you. I know you're going to do well. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward in the future to hearing from you. Tell me a little bit about Austin. Every year, my friends from high school and college, we take a trip to Dallas because some of my friends are not Redskins, Washington football fans and Dallas Cowboys fans. So we go around October, November for that big rival game. And I love that. I love Dallas. I love the weather. Yeah. I love the eateries. I love the people. But I've heard Austin is where it's at. I've been hearing that for years. It's a new like boom town, and there's so many opportunities and so much young people. Can you give me maybe three things that you like or really love about Austin?
Yes, 100%. I love the diversity and just the different culture that you're exposed to. Again, coming from Corpus, it's just very small town mentality. It's just, it's very almost closed-minded in a sense. But when you come to Austin, your inspiration goes up. You're just inspired by so many people who you can just meet on the street, and they have an amazing story about, why they're, out in Austin and doing what they do. And just, you just don't hear the mundane, like, oh, I work a job and that's really it. There's people with passion. There's people that are looking to do things for the world. And that's, a lot of it derives through like maybe just music or photography or just something in the liberal arts field. So it's very awesome just being able to really meet people that have so much going for themselves and just have a lot of big dreams and aspirations.
Good. So no regrets making that move from Corpus Christi to Austin.
Not at all. Not at all. It's definitely been a struggle again, but I would much rather be struggling than, staying in a comfort zone and, just settling, Right. So it's been so great. I know people are kind of calling Austin little LA now.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, there's definitely a lot of Californians making their way out here and putting the prices up. So if you're from California watching this, please stay there. Please don't come to Texas. We're doing just fine. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so I've been seeing a lot of different license plate lately. Illinois, California, Florida. It's getting jam-packed out here, but it's cool.
Well, there is a mass exodus I hear happening in California and in New York. And every time you have the new boom town, like I remember Atlanta was a new boom town. There were so many New York transplants in Atlanta, then Florida, then I remember North Carolina. And so now it seems like Austin is the new shiny city where everybody, you've seen all these transplant from everywhere, which is good because it lends to the diversity you were talking about.
Yeah, because I know Tesla's coming out here, like big corporations are making their way out here. So it's opening up a lot of great opportunities for employment. So I think that's why a lot of people are kind of coming out here because tech is huge, right? So I think that's another reason why people are making that big move out here.
Okay. Well, good. I'm happy you found a home. It sounds like you're going to be there for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything else that pops up where I feel my heart, needs to be at, or, where I kind of want to make a foundation there or something, I'll definitely make it switch. But I'm loving Austin right now.
Good, good. So I know we have a few topics to get to. The first topic I wanted to touch on is the topic of all ethnicities obtaining unbiased, unemotional education on American history.
Yeah.
Can you go ahead? Oh, you sound ready. Go ahead. You sound ready.
Topics, yeah.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think why that topic, even came about, right, is because I have taken the time to do my own research on this and just really discovering, why I've always felt the way I felt about people in America, right? So, so what kind of led me to this topic was, I don't know if you ever watched the documentary Hidden Colors. We've ever heard of that. Great documentary on not just American history, but world history and kind of how world history ended up impacting America.
I'm sorry, Deandra, where can I and other people find this on? Is it Netflix? Is it?
Yeah, so Hidden Colors, it's a very low key documentary. So I think you could do your research and find it on YouTube. I believe if you just look up Hidden Colors, it'll show up, and I think it'll give you some streaming services to where you can find it. Me, I have a Fire Stick, and I do a little bit of jailbreaking action. So that's how
I might have to edit. I might have to edit this out. You're fine. You're fine.
Oh no.
You're fine.
Okay.
Everybody has a Fire Stick. I'm just joking.
That's so funny. It was really scared me for a second. Oh no. Well, yeah. So that's how I kind of, find my resources or kind of look things up where it's just not so accessible. So if I want to watch something, I can easily pull it up that way. So that's how I've been looking into Hidden Colors. I think there's about 4 documentaries. I've gone through 2, so I'm excited to get to the 3 and 4.
Okay.
But, yeah, Hidden Colors is amazing. It really opens your eyes on just the history of Africans and kind of what led just different things, like gets into religion, how the thought process of Europeans taking over and the genocide of Native Americans and having their Africans come over and just basically just build their land, build on their land. So I mean, it really goes deep. It goes deep into the thought process of it, not just what we already know, because we all know that, right? We all know that happened, but they really deep dive into what led to what and the thought process behind that. It's no mystery that the notion's always that African Americans or just Black people in general aren't the most loved race, right? So, and they really go into why is that, so it's really, really, really eye-opening. And this isn't just for Black people, it's for everyone to look into things and again, just have that unbiased lens, have the unemotional lens, because it could be super easy to look at things whenever you're attached to something, when you're already, attached to how you think and how you were raised. But if you just take a moment and just forget about those things and really look at something with an open mind, it will really change some things for you, and it'll make you look at, at the world in a different lens. So
I don't think we as Americans do a great job with learning our history, period. And I'm guilty of that. And so for me, as a Black person, it's important for me to know my history, which I think is American history. I'm not really into this white history, Black history.
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. No.
Yeah. Black history is American history. That's what it is.
Right.
That's
and when you call it Black history, then it kind of lends itself to people not being as interested as they should be in it because they don't think it pertains to them. But no, It does. It's American history.
That's very true. That's right.
I have an issue with Hollywood beating me over the head with slavery movies.
Mm.
It's Black people are so much more than slavery. And when I talk to my white colleagues or white friends or just white people in general, the only history they really have of Black people is slavery.
That's right.
There are so many Black contributors to society. And I'm not just talking about the ones that America has made famous. They're the go-tos, the Martin Luther Kings, the Rosa Parks, the Malcolm X. And these people who I just listed have done great things. But there is a whole slew of Black people that we're leaving behind. And it kind of gives the impression that our contribution is limited.
Right.
And it's not.
100%.
And I hope that we can each take the time to just do our history. And I'm talking about myself as well. I'm talking about Asian American. I'm talking about Native American. I'm talking about just history in general, because all of that to me is American history.
It is.
I don't really want to believe in this race history, that race. No, it's all American history. So we all should know it.
Yep, that is 100% right. Because again, American history is derived from world history again. So just how, we even came to America, it's derived by what kind of happened around the world before they got here. So yeah, that's a very good point. As far as what you mentioned, Hollywood, yes, 100%. I'm sick and tired of watching, Yes Massa, and just watching us be the word I'm looking for, just very vulgar things happening to us. And it creates a psychological thing for Black people, like I can only see myself in that light, or that's the only thing that I can, associate my history with. That's not true at all. And it's so sad. I speak a lot about this with my roommate or just whoever, how Hollywood can do just a great job at really making people feel like they're limited to what they can do, so don't get me wrong. I grew up on, BET and, everything that they showed there, Baby Boy, Boys in the Hood. And, and you look back at that and, what does that do for Black men, right? Like, you don't see Black men in a good light. It's almost as if, that's what they're, that's just what they're calling in as a Black man. It's just to be in the hood and go through these, hood struggles. And it's very unfortunate. So things that I would like to see change is, like Black Wall Street, like that could shape the minds of so many young Black men growing up and, seeing Black professionals, that could do so much just for the future generations. So that's something that I would love to see happen in Hollywood is, if someone kind of take the step out to do those things and kind of think about it in that way. So
it's happening.
Yeah.
Russell Westbrook from the Washington Wizards is coming out with the Black Wall Street documentary. I saw the preview for it recently, and it looks really, really good. But once again, it had to take Russell Westbrook. It's not Hollywood saying, hey, this is something that needs to be highlighted.
Right.
Because it's a great story and will uplift. You can't keep showing me, and imagery is extremely powerful. People need to realize this. You can't keep showing me slavery movies and movies about boys in the hood and not think that's going to have a negative effect on me as a Black person, and also give a person of another race an ill perception of the people who comprise of that race. Hollywood needs to do a better job, or they will overcorrect. So you will see something where the Black people are really rich. And then the people in the middle, just your average Black person who wants to work hard and wants to come home to their family and just everyday life, that's missing. It's either one extreme to the next. The stories are just not realistic.
Yeah.
And doesn't encompass everything about the Black community. And I just wish Hollywood would do a better job at that.
Yep, you're so right. And that kind of ties into kind of how I ended up realizing almost what you said earlier about, just the long goal, waking up doing the same thing, for the next 50 years. And, I kind of got to a point for myself, of where did this desire of being like a singer come from? It's like, I could sing, right? But it's like, why did I want to pursue that so much? And I felt like I stopped and I really thought about it. And that was kind of what, it was just painted in Hollywood to, really make it as a Black woman. I didn't see a lot of Black women entrepreneurs. I didn't see a lot of, business owners. I didn't, like, in my personal circle, I never went to a store and just see, a Black woman running something, so that's the only thing that I was exposed to. And the only thing that I felt like I could, really make a name for myself is just being, a Black artist that's on TV,
Right.
So that's something that I ended up discovering for myself. It was kind of a tough pill to swallow, but at the end of the day, I'm glad that that's something that I realized was, I was chasing a dream that was put in front of me, because my knowledge was just so limited of, what all I could do and all the different other talents that I have and how I could use my brain, and just really, create, nothing into something. And that's kind of why, why I'm at the point where I'm at right now is because of those things of just really discovering different talents that I had. So I definitely did take a step back into music and singing because I was just learning so many different things that I was skilled in.
Right. And now before we leave this topic, unfortunately, when it comes to history, who's really reading? Are we in an era where people are reading for themselves? Are we in an era where people have a desire, a burning desire to learn anything, much less history? That happened 100 years ago. Why do I have to learn it now? That's to me the attitude. And that's to me very dangerous when you try to either not go back and learn history or make an attempt to revise it, which I see that's happening a lot as well. And I just think it's dangerous. I think we need to do a better job. If it's not on Facebook or Instagram, then it didn't happen. And I'm like, huh? What? Like, this is something that needs to be addressed. We're going backwards in terms of researching, doing the knowledge for ourselves, not taking somebody else's word, but actually reading for yourself or watching a documentary. And that's why it gets Hidden Colors. And this is why I'm looking forward to the Black Wall Street, because we need more options to find, to learn history. I mean, I know about Black Wall Street. Do I know it like the back of my hand? No. And that's nobody's fault but mine. But with the interest that it's building is going to make me go back and really get into it, really, really learn it. Because we can't leave it up to the school education. I've never heard Black Wall Street in my how many years of matriculating through school. And I think that's intentional.
Yep, it really is. And you mentioning that point about reading, that's really awesome because it reminded me of, the movie Freedom Writers, right? Mario's in there, Hilary Swank. So you saying that reminded me of this phrase that one of the actors said, because I was watching the behind the scenes of it, and they were just kind of talking and communicating about, how the movie came about and just the history of it. And one of the actresses said I forgot where her source was from or who said this, but she said there was a quote, "If you want to keep something from a Black person, put it in a book." And I thought that was super powerful because that just means that the knowledge is out there. We just have to know to go look for it and seek it and read it, So
That's what's funny to me, that people are not reading now, because now we're living in the age of information, where it's it's at our disposal.
Yep. Absolutely. And you saying that, like, I'm sitting next to my stack of books right now. So that's really funny. I got my 10 Step Towards Christ, my Bible, a Mike Todd book here. So that's really cool. I definitely do read. I was not a reader, 100% not a reader, but it has changed so much for me. Again, just getting educated and knowing why I am the way I am. And really just these next topics that we're going to jump into. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about Black conservatives and the thought process. Well, first of all, would you consider yourself a conservative or a liberal?
You know what? That's something that I had to learn too. I'm definitely not liberal. I would say that I have some conservative, ways of thinking. But I feel like those kind of mostly apply to just my kind of like financial and entrepreneurial kind of side of things. But when it comes to actual like political things, like issues about race, it gets a little skewed. And then I think my spirituality comes into play about politics. Like, I don't want to be labeling myself as a liberal or conservative, Republican, Democrat, because I don't believe, these are my personal beliefs. This is not, I don't believe that was something, that a label is something that we should be putting on ourselves, because I think that's what provides, or that's what causes division to begin with, because as soon as you call yourself something, somebody else's ears goes completely shut, So I think that's my thought process on that. I kind of state my views, but I don't really like to label myself, just because I know the psychological effect that can have for somebody once hearing that I call myself something. They're like, oh, they're a coon or something, and it gets very closed-minded very quick when you put labels on something.
And I have a big problem with that, because I'm not really big into labels, but hey, if a person wants to call themselves a vegan and you don't eat meat, then you are a vegan. And right. If I am a carnivore, I should be able to respect that. So because we're at a place where we can't agree to disagree, we can't say who we are. Yeah. And it's weird for me, because Obsessively Outspoken is about finding your voice when it matters most and using it. So if you stand on this, say it.
Right.
But now, the person who, I don't know, is going through whatever, or the person who identifies as this or as that, can't say anything. And when you don't say anything, you're dying on the inside.
Right.
And I don't want to critique somebody because they tell me that they're a label, because they label themselves something that I'm not. No, you should be able to go into any space, any safe space or any space, and say, this is who I am. Accept me or don't. I'm not trying to go to places where I am tolerated. I want to go to places where I'm celebrated. And if you don't like me for who I am and what I stand for, then let it be known. And I'll take my body and my values and my label somewhere else. And it shouldn't be this way, because I want to integrate with everybody. But now we're at a time in Earth history where if you're not this, if you don't believe in that, then there's no space for you here. You can't stand in this space. You can't go over there. What happened to just acceptance and welcoming everybody?
Right. I 100% agree with that. And I feel like, since that is the notion of things, I think it's so much simpler. I feel like if just taking the time out to actually having conversations with somebody, because I think if you go into it again, saying that, oh, I'm this belief, it's almost like where it doesn't even matter what that person has to say. They already have something in their head about you. And so say if you came into something, and it doesn't even have to be like, whatever you go by, whatever I go by, right? You have a conversation, you come out of that realizing that there is way more similarities than what you have differences. Even if you didn't, and going into it, you probably didn't even know that you had differences, right? So I think that's just kind of where I'm coming from is, we don't have to come into something saying that this is my belief, so I'm a label myself whatever we call this belief, because again, it already creates that division, unfortunately, because of, again, just titles that we want to abide by, or and even those are funky, right? Because I know people who have a lot of conservative views, but they're like, I'm not Republican though, because because it's just there's just so many different things that people can associate yourself with, even though you don't necessarily agree with those things, so it gets a little screwy when it comes to that, especially with politics. Good Lord.
No matter where I go on this earth, no matter the human being that I come in contact with, I know me and that person will have more similarities than we will have differences.
Way more similarities.
The issue is the differences are amplified and overshadows the similarities, where now we don't even care about the fact that we're similar in so many ways because we're both human. I don't care if we have the different skin color or different gender or different sexual lifestyle, this and that. We're human. So that alone tells me I have way more similarities with you than I don't. But we want to focus so much on the differences. Why? Maybe it's society on a whole. I don't know. But if it is, why are we allowing society to dictate what brings us together and what doesn't?
Right.
Or why are we as individuals, citizens in this country, allowing ourselves to think that way? What's the problem?
Exactly.
I wake up, I go to the bathroom, I eat, I want the best for my family, you want the best for your family, I get cut, I bleed, you get cut, you bleed. Tell me, what's the problem? There is none.
100%.
We just want to find the little things, nuances.
Yep. And, and again, I just believe it's an agenda, for what things that have happened in our history. And I just think that there's people who want things to stay the way they have been. So I think that's why there's those things that are created, on us, like the narratives and nuances and titles and stuff like that. So again, it's just going to take people getting uncomfortable, getting educated. And again, just hearing people out with an unemotional, unbiased, just really open-minded to what your reality isn't. And that's actually what I wanted to talk about with this topic with Black conservatives, is that you hear a lot of Black conservatives, I'm going to say like Candace Owen. I'm sure, are you familiar with Candace Owen?
Unfortunately.
Yes. So what I'm going to say about her is that, don't get me wrong, like I agree with a lot of what she says. I do. But there's a lot of things where I'm like, okay, Candace, you are American, but you're still Black, right? And I think that there's a lot of, her association that she's affiliated herself with, where I think she just tries to separate herself too far from the democratic, issues that, involve Black people, to the fact where I think she's almost, just kind of lost herself, because I agree with a lot of what she talks about. But at the end of the day, I kind of sit back and think, I'm like, well, do you love yourself, as a Black woman? It's like, you're a Black woman, right? At the end of the day. And so there's just a lot of things that I feel like she doesn't really sound like she's been through a lot as a Black person, And so I think it's really easy to victimize or tell other Black people that they're being overdramatic about something, or we're playing the victim card. And there's surprisingly overwhelmingly amount of Black people who say this stuff, saying that, oh, we're just being, dramatic, and we're playing the victim card and this, that, and the third. But a lot of the times those same people end up getting slapped with reality from, being racially profiled or, something like that happening. And then all of a sudden their world turns upside down. And then they start realizing, what your other fellow African Americans have gone through their entire life or have, experienced. So I think that's a lot of Black people who are Black conservatives. A lot of them have experienced Black people, problems for whatever their background is, right? But I think that's what skews a lot of their reality and what really divides us and ends up being a whole thing. I don't know.
So I'm going to say, not to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
I'm going to say this. I am a liberal.
Okay.
I am a liberal. You can find anyone in America that's the most progressive, the most radical, the most liberal person, and I am standing on the left of that person. That's how liberal I am. And I am so liberal that I want Candace Owens. I want Kanye West. I want the other famous Black conservative to be conservative. Because I'm liberal, meaning I want everybody to be liberated to be who they are. With that said, why do they have to go overboard with the rhetoric? Why does Candace Owens have to tell me which drugs was in George Floyd's body after this man narrated his own death, after this police officer sat on his neck for over 8 minutes? I don't want to hear that.
Right.
You're putting a narrative out there that he deserved what he got because he had drugs in the system. And that's not how it works.
Right.
And they went to court and found out that the drugs in the system was minimum and didn't have an effect on the reason why he died overall.
Right.
Kanye West, he visits Donald Trump. I have no problem with that. If you love Donald Trump, great. If that's your president, you voted for him and you were a supporter, great. But why do you have to bend the knee? Why do you have to kiss the ring? Why do you have to say stuff like, I never had a dad, you're my dad? Why do we have to go overboard? Like, what point are you trying to prove by going overboard?
Right.
This is what I'm saying. Why can't you just be a regular, sane supporter? Why as a Black person? Because this is a man who said Colin Kaepernick is a son of a bitch. He needs to get off the field. He kneeled on a field in peace to bring awareness to things that are happening to Black people, Black and brown people across the country.
Right. So right.
He didn't say anything about the police when Derek Chauvin took that same knee and landed it on the neck of a Black person. So if you want to praise a person who talks about one person who is Black taking a knee for progress peacefully, but he doesn't say anything about this man a white man who puts his knee on the thing, that tells me where you are. And what I'm saying is, it's fine. That's your belief. Great. But why do you have to make a spectacle out of it? Why do you have to go to the White House and show out the way that you do? It gives ammunition to the other side who says, well, see, the Black people who talk about police brutality don't really have it right, because here are these Black people who says there's nothing wrong with it. They say Donald Trump is a racist, but here are these Black people, because how far they go, they love him. Right. They love, look at, and so the conversation gets convoluted and it gets messy because you all drown out, and they're looking for Black people. They're looking for Black people to fit their narrative. They want to say, and they want to believe, racism is over. It doesn't even exist. And so any Black person who spits that type of rhetoric and narrative, they're going to lash on to them. And they're going to bring them into the fold because they want them to keep them in that mind state of what they want to believe. So you can't tell me because a black person is in a position that racism automatically just goes away after how many years it's been in existence and we haven't talked about it or even got even close to progressing in a new direction. You can't say that. You want it to go away. You don't want to face the facts. But hey, it's all around us. And here it is. So I don't even know. I'm on a rant right now. But my point is, Black conservatives, even if you have good intention, when you get in front of a mic or you visit the president or you want to speak your voice because you feel like Black people should be conservative and not all Black people should be Democrats, great. But understand the power that you have and the influence that you have and be mindful of what you're saying. And I can say the same thing for Black Democrats. Be very mindful of what you're saying. Right. Because to me, to talk about George Floyd drugs in the system, but a white man can slaughter how many people in Walmart, how many people in a Black church, and y'all could take him to McDonald's, and y'all could take him away safely, but you can't. This man had drugs in your system and you think that's warranted for him to be suffocated and die in the manner that we all saw around the world? Come on, stop it. To me, Kanye West went to the White House and made a fool out of himself. That's my opinion. And I'm saying that based off the words and the antics that he was displaying. Right. You ain't represent me, not that day, because you were talking about planes, making planes, and you were off the rails. I didn't hear anything about Black issues that pertain to me or the community on the whole. So you weren't representing me. I don't know what you were doing when you went to the White House. I think you like him because he came up the ranks the way you came up the ranks as a musician. Nobody gave you a chance. Nobody thought you would amount to anything. And the same thing with Trump. And so there was some camaraderie there. And that's great. But once again, why do you have to make a fool of yourself? Right. No, everything that you just touched on is 100% true. I think so. What I gathered from Candace Owen is that, I've never read her book. But what I've gathered from this woman is that I believe she just feels like she may just have more intel on the inside that we're just, probably blind or ignorant to, as just regular American civilians. That's just kind of what my perspective is on how I think the reason why Candace says the thing that she says is because I think she genuinely believes that what's going on on the inside and the information that she has with, all the other elites, around. I believe that she's just so headstrong on things that are an agenda. But the way she goes about preaching what's going on is not, it's not in the best way. So if she believed that George Floyd's, death was an agenda for a bigger, purpose, to cause like a race war or something like that, then that's something that she needs to be more compassionate about trying to convey that message and not say that George Floyd was whatever she was saying about him and saying that, he has these drugs in his system and, I don't know what she was trying to connect the dots to by saying that, so it's just my thing is whatever you're trying to say, you need to say it. And especially if you want to get a group of, whatever your agenda is, everyone needs to approach things compassionately. And a lot of conservatives, and this is just conservatives in general, don't do that. They like to go at people's throats. It's very unattractive. And I don't agree with that at all. I genuinely believe that people need to address things, initiate things, and with a compassionate heart. And that's a lot of things that they lack. But I think for me as a Black woman watching Candace Owen is that I just don't believe, and this isn't anything that she's physically said, but it's just watching how she moves. I
I just really wish that she has taken the time, because you can just tell she has been so indulged and educated in herself as a political woman. Of course, she's very intelligent in that realm, but I don't think she has really taken the time to really know who she is as a Black woman. I don't think she has really taken the time to, just understand herself, to love herself for who she is, and it's, a lot of the times you hear these people, and it's a lot of other, Black women conservatives, where they just speak in this manner where I just don't believe that they genuinely love themselves for who they are. And because, a lot of the times they state, I'm an American, like, yes, that's true. But you're Black, right? And you have history that goes beyond America, right? You have a native tongue that you don't know. Like there's a lot of people here, Vietnamese, Korean, Filipinos, other Europeans, or other Africans. They know their history. They know it. Jewish people, they know their history. They know their native tongue. They know where they're derived from. They know those things about themselves. A lot of us African Americans that, came up the way we came up, we do not know those things. And I feel like if we did, I genuinely feel like our perspective on things, the way we think about things, would be completely different. I think we would feel so much more, I feel, at peace with each other, at more a unity, knowing what we came from. I think it's crazy saying that I won't be able to tell my children what their native tongue was, or what tribe we came from, or, like what, our culture was back in the day or something. It tears me up inside knowing that I don't know those things, and I won't be able to tell those to my children because people strip that away from us, So that's just the deeper meaning of what I feel like these Black conservatives really try to portray, is that, stop feeding into the agenda of being victimized and, welfare this, welfare that, Democrat this, Democrat that, which, I agree, don't stay in your poop. Don't stay, a victim to the society that you were put in. Do the work, get uncomfortable, and struggle your way out of what you're in, so you can receive victory over those things. So, because it's going to pass on to your children, so you need to get that victory. I highly agree with that. But again, just the way she is personally, I don't think she has taken the time out to really know herself as a Black woman. When she has her child, I believe she's already had her child. It's like, is she going to be able to instill those values into that child so they know who they are for, who they are, which they're going to be, I'm sure, a beautiful mixed child, but they're going to need to know who they are. Calling themselves an American, I'm sorry, but I don't want to associate myself with all that turmoil that we were brought into, So just knowing where you came from, I feel it's just essential. A lot of people know where they came from. So a lot of people don't have the struggles of Black people because they have those values. They have that foundation. A lot of Black people don't. So a lot of Black people are lost, in my opinion, so that's just really how I feel about Black conservatives. I just feel that they're lost, and they're following away, because I think that's a substitute of what their real void is in their life. That's just my opinion.
I just feel if I grab a blunt and I smoke weed right here while I talk to you, and I go outside and I get killed by the police, I don't think because I smoke weed that justifies why I got killed. If I pass off a counterfeit $20 bill and I walk outside, I don't think that's reason or justification for me to get killed. If I kill somebody, handcuff me, give me my day in court, I still don't think that's reason for me to be killed. But Candace Owens want me to believe that because he had drugs in his system, and she started off that 18-minute video she had, that's what she started with. Mm-hmm. You lose me right there, because in my mind, you're trying to justify vigilante justice. and I cannot listen to you any further because you don't make any sense whatsoever, because that man did not deserve to die. Even if he killed somebody, which he didn't, he still didn't deserve to die, and he definitely didn't deserve to die in that manner. 100%. So that's my problem. She could talk about black people pull up their pants by the bootstraps, all the stuff, welfare queen. You could talk about all of that. And like you said, some of that, hey, I agree. We have to do better. But when it comes to that issue, when it comes to black lives being lost and you're talking about meth, no.
Right.
I don't have any tolerance for that at all. Because to me, meth is a very, 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 very minuscule piece of this puzzle of why this man is no longer existing on Earth. I don't care about meth. I don't care about angel dust. I don't care. He should still be alive. Period. Right. End of story.
Right.
So
I'm not gonna lie to you. I haven't watched that clip, and I don't really know what her justification is of making that statement. That sounds extremely dumb. I don't know what that has to do with, a man losing his life. And that goes for anything. I remember my dad getting locked up for because my dad, he was a drug addict, but he passed away my sophomore year in high school. God rest his soul. But that's the reality that he grew up in. He grew up in that era of the 70s, 80s, where, we were getting hit with, crack cocaine. And, it really messed up, the Black community, especially with fathers in the home, and just that whole, rabbit hole of how that's really, messed us up. And that kind of gets touched into the 13th documentary. But like my dad, I remember, he was a drug addict. He had some struggles, and he got locked up for having cocaine or like crack residue. Just no actual possession, right? Just residue in his back seat, and they're locked up. Right. And and it's ridiculous. And if I hear another Black person that's going to justify that, we're going to have some problems. That's absolutely ridiculous. So again, I don't know what her justification on that was, but other things that I have witnessed from her, again, I agree with a lot of what she says, and I disagree with a lot of what she says too, and how she moves, as a person. So that was something that I wanted to touch on. But I will say, I don't know if you know who Angela Stanton is. But she's a Black conservative. I think she ran, I forgot what kind of, department she was really running for, but in Atlanta. She's a Black conservative, and she's someone that I love to follow, because at the end of her and Candace Owens don't get along, but she is someone that I really enjoy following because she knows who she is. She knows where she comes from. She knows the issues in her community, and she stands firm on those beliefs, and she goes out of her way. She puts her life on the line. She gets threatened by a lot of people who, threaten her life because of how she, really stands for, what she believes in. A lot of for what she pushes for is, abolishing abortion. Because she's pro-life, but she ties that in with Black lives, and her agenda is, if Black lives really matter, we need to figure out other outlets of, stop aborting our children, stop aborting Black lives, because agenda-based things, Planned Parenthoods are, they're in the project area. They're in the, the redlining area, right? Of where we're at. And so it's just so accessible for us to take care of those things. Why? Why is that so heavily pushed on us? And at the end of the day, your choice is your choice, and you can do that. Free will, 100%. But I do agree with Angela Stanton. Black lives matter as a fetus, so the disproportionate percentages of the rate of Black women getting abortions versus other ethnicities, it's astounding. So that already puts a damper on us as a community. So that's something that I do agree with her with. And there's just a lot of other things that she pushes. And I agree with a lot of what she says. And she just has those proper morals. She really does. So Angela Stanton, she's great. I love her as a Black conservative woman. But yeah, Candace Owens, she needs some work.
And there's different degrees of everything, different degrees of conservative, Black conservative, different degrees of Black Democrats. Some are liberal, some are there's conservatism within the Democratic Party. There's more moderate in the Republican Party. So I don't want to lump all the Black conservatives, but the ones who always jump off the ledge. Those are the ones, you're right. Those are the ones who I am focusing on. The ones who are moderate, the ones who are rational, the ones who are reasonable. My rant wasn't about you. This is about people just talking crazy without understanding the consequence of their words. Words matter. How you phrase and frame words matter. And we just have to be mindful not to do other people's bidding and not to be used as a pawn when we get up in front of a mic or on a stage or in front of a podium. That's all I was talking about. But I'm glad you brought up. I'll definitely look her up. Because like I said, I follow moderate Republican. Well, I just look for rational, reasonable, and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, not everything that Angela says I agree with. I'm like, that's a little, I don't know about that, Angela. But a lot of the things I do way more than Candace Owens. And again, I believe the thought process behind conservatives is just, again, I think that they're just trying to really, you're just so far right that they just don't want anything to do with left. And they have to remember who they are, regardless of what your belief is. You know what you look like, Right. And if you really want to help those people that look like you need to address that in a compassionate way. And you need to, and just don't, don't lose yourself. And I feel like a lot of these people have lost themselves. Because again, they just gone so far right. And that's not what's going to make things work. Honestly, politics in general, I just don't think it's one of the biggest dividers in humanity, in my opinion. So
right. I think to stay on George Floyd for a second is going to preamble the next topic, which is mental health in the Black community. Mm-hmm. The same way I said earlier that imagery matters. Looking at 12 years of a slave and all the other slave movies coming out of Hollywood, or movies that may portray us in not the best light. The same way I look at those movies, and I have to be mindful of what I put into my conscious and subconscious, I have an issue with watching videos of Black men, Black women, Black and brown people being killed on a consistent basis. My mental health cannot endure any more visuals of seeing that happening. I don't know how to compartmentalize it anymore. I don't know how to internalize it anymore. And it's having a negative effect on me. Yes, I understand it's raising awareness. Look what's happening across the country. I know. Trust me, I know. And I've seen enough. Because right now, it's not having the effect that people think it's having. And to see George Floyd in that video, I've seen it more times than I care to count, and no more. No more. And it's now, to me, I don't know how most people feel about it, but I'm afraid the videos, yes, it may raise awareness, but it's also normalizing these actions as well. If the government wanted to stop the killings of innocent, well, forget about that. because there are guilty white men with AR-15s who are taking in handcuffs and taken alive. So forget about innocent, armed or unarmed. I don't care. Guilty or innocent, armed or unarmed, there should be a way to take Black men and women in handcuffs versus leaving them dead where they stood or where they sat in their car. If we wanted to, as an American government, wanted it to stop today, I believe in my heart and in my mind, it can happen.
100%.
This is not just a Republican thing. This is an American government thing. And I am saying the more videos I watch, the more I have to combat being reduced and feeling like an animal and feeling like this is my life when I walk out the door. And this could be my last day if I get put away. I'm living in a constant state of fear. And to be honest, that's kind of been the walk of life for Black people for a very long time. But now when you see it constantly happening in real time or on videos, it's real.
Yeah.
So mental health has to be a priority in the Black community to help us deal with these constant, not just killings, but I had grown up in New York City, in Brooklyn. I had a gun shoved in my rib. I had my jacket, my Nautica jacket. It was reversible. I loved that jacket. Took it right off of me because I froze. When I had that gun stuck to my rib, they just took it off of me because I didn't want to give it up. So once the gun came out, I just froze and they happily took it off of me. I can't remember anybody saying you need to go to therapy. I can't remember anybody saying you're traumatized. I can't remember anybody saying any of those things. And that's just one incident that I've been through, or my family members been through, or my friends been through growing up in this country. So we have a lot of catching up to do when it comes to dealing with these traumas that we didn't even know were traumatic in the first place. We just woke up and continue to live.
Right.
All this stuff is new. All this stuff is new to me. All this stuff that you're talking about is trauma. To me, as growing up, that was an average day. Yeah, that was an average day. So
100%.
I'm gonna give you the floor, but this is concerning. This is disturbing. And we have to do something because even though we're alive, I wonder how many of us are well mentally.
Yep. 100%. You just saying that, it's so true, because just traumatic things that has happened to us. And this is like, since I'm mixed, I've experienced it on both sides of the spectrum, because, since Hispanics and Black people, we're different in race, ethnicity, but the thought process is very much the same of how you handle things, how you handle traumatic things. It's just life. It's just life, and that's how it's thrown at you. Oh, it's just life, and you have to get through it. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. No, what doesn't kill you makes you want to feel like you want to be dead, sometimes.
Right.
And it's just that's just the notion. I think now that this is being more aware, and awesome that we're in the month of May. So this is actually Mental Health Awareness Month. So it's really cool that we get to talk about this topic, but it's super crazy because I'm glad that I'm able to be aware of this stuff and stop it now, so I don't carry that over to my children. I'm going to just kind of, talk about my story a little bit, to how I discovered mental, just how I even realized that it was a thing, kind of like what you just mentioned right now. So growing up, again, my mom Hispanic, dad Black. There's just a lot of turmoil, things that just happened, a lot of domestic abuse, a lot of just toxic things that just went on in the household. But I was being told that, oh, Deandra, you should be grateful that you have both parents in the house. I was like, if it would have been better to been living with a single parent, and not, witness all this, toxicity and abuse, then that's a life I would have, asked to live for. But I was being told that I should have been grateful to have both of my parents in the house, even though the worst domestic abuse was going on between them, and verbal abuse, emotional abuse, and just being told that it's part of life, and that's just something that you need to live through. And what kind of got me to that point was just things that I had personally went through after my dad passing. I did have someone that I was dating in high school. He passed. My best friend who helped me cope with those losses, she ended up passing back in 2016. So it was just loss after loss after loss. And I never got a moment to allow myself to heal. It was just after the next thing, because I was always just told, hey, Deandra, it's part of life. You have to move on. And that's what I did. I was just like, well, I'm not, it happened. I'm not going to mope. I got to go to work the next day. I still got to move on with my life. Never gave myself time to comprehend, let it sit, really let myself feel, and then so that just manifested into why I realized, and this ties back into like just music, right? Kind of how when I cut the music off, and when you turn something down, you're allowing it to distract you from your reality, everything starts coming up, So a lot of people like to drown themselves in things that distract them, whether that be drugs, or just, and even good things. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that are just very wealthy, but they're messed up inside because they put themselves to work so hard to avoid, what was really bothering them. Something that happened to them when they were 6 years old and they're a 30-year-old millionaire and they can't even, keep a wife or have a wife or, anything. Like they can't even have a solid relationship because they're so messed up, but they're looked at from the outside as being so successful. But you have no idea what's going on up in here just because we have distracted ourselves from it. So that's definitely something that I realized was whenever I took a step back from music, I realized that was one of my cop-outs, one of my distractions was that I was just really throwing myself into something. And when I turned it off, everything that has just bothered me for years has came up and I had no idea how to handle it. I was like, I don't know why I'm grieving about something that I thought I was over, you're never over it. Right. So I think that was definitely something that has happened. And then realizing that those were issues and coming to terms that this is something that I want to deal with, and realizing that it goes deeper than that, right? It's like, why were my parents so toxic to each other? Why were they why was this, such a domestic environment? Why is my relationship with my brother not the way I want it to be? Why is he so sour? Why does he have such a hard ego? Because he was going through things that I couldn't understand as a younger sister, and really taking the time to learn that my brother went through things, that affected him differently than what it affected me, so those were things that I had to, learn and really understand his perspective on things. Because before I was just very bitter that he was bitter, instead of, having the knowledge to know that, hey, he actually went through a lot of stuff, and just really taking the eyes off of me for a second and having that perspective and really feeling for my brother and reaching out to him saying like, hey man, I'm so sorry that those things happened to you. Because he just has so many barriers and emotional walls built up. because of those things. So it all affected us differently. But I started thinking about the origins of how those things kind of happen, and thinking back into my mom's history. My mom, since she's Hispanic, her family was very into, like, you shouldn't be dating outside of our culture, religion, race, for that matter. So she liked Black men. And so she was looked at as the black sheep in the family. And so that automatically turned into like a shun from my grandpa. So she got kicked out of the house at 18, and, and she didn't have anything to her besides who could have helped her, which I guess was the man she was dating at the time. Right. So she had to figure out everything on her own, which turned into resentment towards my grandparents, or my grandpa rather. And just living a life of just kind of almost living out on the streets and trying to figure out how she needs to do things. And naturally that ended up to men that she was dealing with was abusing her. So she turned all that trust issues and abuse into her life. And she just started transferring it to people that she loved, which is, her kids. Right. And so it just really manifested into other people that she hurt, like my dad. And of course, like, my dad has his issues of, things that he's gone through. But I really feel like my mom just kind of had the worst end of it, because she just has so much built up resentment. And I realized her going through that affected me and my brother. So that's something that I never came to terms with ever in my life, because again, it's put in us that it's just life and you go through it, and that's it. You can't really do anything about it. I don't know if you ever heard the phrase like, oh, Black people don't go to therapy, they go to church, kind of thing. And it's just so sad, because we do have issues that has really caused us to hurt people too. I know there's people in my life where that hurt has transferred over to somebody. And that really makes me sad, that hurts me. But I'm fortunate enough to have that awareness now to stop it. I don't know, I'm single, I don't have any kids or anything. So one of the things that I'm prioritizing for myself is that before I get to that next step, I want to take therapy very seriously. I want to make sure I'm taking those steps so I'm not bleeding over on people that didn't cut me. I just want to make sure once I do have that person in my life, I'm not transferring that toxicness to him, like the all the hidden things that I've never dealt with. I'm not transferring it over to him. I'm not transferring it over to my kids. And that's just what I really want a lot of people to understand is what you've gone through is very real, and you can feel it and you can talk about it. There's resources out there, and plus, and it really ties into spirituality too, but I feel like that's a different conversation. But we need to get it together so we're not passing over these generational traumas and curses to our children and so on, so that's just going to be a huge switch and game changer for the future to come for us. I really feel like that.
Well, first off, thank you for sharing that. And I want to give you my condolences to your dad and the other losses that you experienced with your friend and your boyfriend. But this is why this is so important, because you're talking about it.
Yep.
And it's helping you because it's not staying in here. You don't feel burdened. And then there's somebody who's going to listen to this and said, well, my dad went through the same thing and I didn't. And, we tend to feel like when it's happening and we're in the moment of turmoil or tribulation or trials, that we're the only ones going through it. And like I said earlier, we're all human beings and we have more similarities than we do differences. And I guarantee you, if you're going through something, there was at least one, and I know it's more than one, but at least one person that's going through the same exact thing, or have gone through it, or will go through it in the future.
100%.
And so just hearing your story and talking about it is encouraging and empowering to me, because as a man,
Mm-hmm.
or just say me as a person.
Mm-hmm.
I know what heartache feels like. I know what a stomach ache feels like. I even know what a headache feels like, even though I don't get them very often. I don't know what anxiety, well, I do now, but there was a time I didn't know what anxiety felt like. I didn't know what depression felt like. I didn't know if it was depression or if I just woke up one morning and I was just going through the usual, sometimes general malaise that some people go through. You just fatigued, or you're not up to it today. You don't really know, because I never had somebody or experience where these are the signs that you look for.
Exactly.
And as a Black man, I'm not going to be quick to point to depression is going to be way down on the list. I'm gonna tell you 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 things before I even talk about depression.
Right.
Anxiety, that's not even going to be an issue. That's not even a thing.
That is 100% right. We're not raised to know what that is, or, anything like that.
Right. And so as a once again, as a man, I know a lot of men have problems expressing themselves just in general. But express ourselves dealing with depression is too defeatist, or is perceived as defeatist for us to talk about it to anybody. And when you suffer in silence, you're only exacerbating the situation. It's never going to get better. And I learned that from my personal experience recently, where I just kept my mouth shut. I didn't want anyone to know. I quite didn't know what I was going through until it was too late, until I just flamed out.
Right.
I just burnt out. And then I started reaching out to people who I knew had similar experiences, and was asking them, well, what were you feeling? Because I'm trying to do some research. I'm trying to get some point of reference here to say, well, maybe that's what I was going through too. And when they told me, it enlightened me. And then I said, well, I'm not going to keep this to myself. I'm going to talk about it. And when I started talking about it, people were asking me, well, what were you experiencing? I know why they was asking me that, because I asked somebody, because I'm trying to feel it. I'm trying to make it tangible. What does it look like? Because no one really knows.
Yep.
And so once you know yourself and you have experience with mental health and well-being, you know the things to avoid, you know the things to do, you know what mode you need to jump into. For me, I didn't have a safe mode. I didn't have a get ready mode. I didn't have a preemptive mode, because I knew something was coming. I just stayed silent and didn't tell anyone. And then it was just too late. So now my whole thing is not just to be obsessively outspoken about many, many topics, but mainly this topic, because I think this, once again, getting back to the Black community, because so many things are happening, and because men in particular, and the reason why I keep saying men is because I feel women, you all are more expressive than we are, and you all can go into a certain mode that we won't get into because it's not men. So like if you go to work and you start crying to a female colleague / friend, there's going to be a rallying cry around you. There's going to be like, we're going to go out tonight and we're going to talk about it. And just talking about it alone is helpful. But if I tell my friend that at work or colleague, the first thing is, don't worry about it. There are plenty of other fishes out in the sea. We're going to go to the bar tonight. Don't worry about it. You're going to find it's all these fix it quick solutions, but it's not dealing with the law, right? You're just telling me stuff for me to get over what I told you, but you're not telling me solutions. I mean, in your mind, in a male's mind, that is a solution to go to a bar and find somebody else, but you're not highlighting the fact that I'm hurting over the person that just left me.
Right.
So, and that's just not what we do as men. Allowing ourselves to feel and be vocal about it. So now it's more like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? We can get to LeBron scoring 38 points at some point. We can get to the new BMW that came out. We can get into that, but how are you doing? How's the family? How's this and that? And that's where I'm at, is that how do we create safe spaces for men to be as vulnerable and as vocal as we can be, just dealing with everyday life situations, marriage, relationships, work, physical ailments, finances, just open our mouths and just start talking about it. And the biggest hurdle, and you touched on it, is for me, I'm not going to therapy. I'm not crazy. Well, I never said you were crazy.
Yep.
And you know what? I don't even have a dog in this fight. I didn't create therapy. I'm not getting paid if you go. So forget about therapy, but do something. Do you meditate? Do you journal? Do you engage in physical activity? Do something. But for us, it's when you talk about therapy, well, that's white people stuff.
White people stuff, yeah.
And we have to stop saying that, because just because white people have a tradition of doing something longer than we have, because they had the access and the finances to do it, that doesn't mean it's white people stuff. Exactly. That just mean we didn't have the resources to do it. But therapy is on this planet for everybody, not just white people. And black people, I wish we will stop making things black and white issues. A black person needs therapy, an Asian person needs therapy, and Indian, everybody at some point needs therapy or some mode of getting centered in dealing with traumatic generational trauma.
Yep. That's so right. Things that you just mentioned, I just want to touch on where exactly what you said about Black men, because again, I'm Black, so I'm exposed to Black men and what they've gone through. Like I mentioned, like my brother, before I got to that point of even getting him to even open up, saying that he was like, he doesn't trust anybody. He has a wife now, but he's very, very to himself. He does not trust. He doesn't have any friends. He doesn't have a social life, really. And honestly, it was the way that we were brought up that kind of got him to that point, because everything that we had gone through, he was looked at the guy who needed to be strong for everybody, but nobody was there for him to let him feel. I remember going through, grieving for my dad. I remember vividly how he was there for me. He was trying to make me laugh. He was just trying to comfort me, but there was nobody there for him to grieve, to let him grieve. There was nobody there for him like the way he was there for me. And that was for, I want to say, a lot of things in his life that happened, or a lot of traumatic things that happened. He comforted me all the time with there was some things going on, but there was nobody ever there for him. And so I can only imagine what, that kind of toll that took on him. He has trust issues now. He expressing his emotions is very all over the place. And so what I did, the responsibility that I took, because I feel like for things to happen like that, when you're talking about Black men and their issues, if you want to create a safe space, and if you're in a situation where you want to create a safe space for somebody, you have to do your part and get yourself educated and have the perspective, and don't take things personally, because that's what I had to do. Was I let my brother say what he had to say without having an offended heart to it, and just really understanding where he's coming from and not attaching myself to what he's going through. I think people just really need to take the time out, because I know as women, sometimes we want to be like, well, I'm trying to be here for you, and you just being, like, that's the last thing that's probably the number one thing that you could do to put that wall back up, is trying to almost nag somebody to, open up. And that's something that really stretched me, because I really was that kind of person where I'm like, I don't know why you're being so emotional. I don't know why you're making it so difficult to just say what you got to say, kind of thing. But I really took that time to understand and to understand how men have egos naturally. And it could be, and honestly, that's how they move. Like their ego is just very, very, like they need those things to be a man, And so being a woman and being compassionate to that, you have to be compassionate to those things. And so, making a safe space where you're not hurting a man's ego or bruising a man's ego. So that's something that was completely new for me, learning that but the thing is, I took the time to learn these things, So I'm really grateful that I did, because now me and my brother have a way better relationship. We didn't talk for 3 years because he was stuck in his ways. I was stuck in my ways. So I'm really glad that I did take the time out to do what I did, so I can let him vent and just really, just open up about what happened to him and his perspective. And, we're doing way better now. And I'm really appreciative of that. And yeah, I mean, and it extends to, that's the point that I wanted to make, was that I think if you're in a situation where you want just a man, and that's anybody, your husband or boyfriend, brother, friend, to open up in that light, it's your responsibility to make sure you're making that safe space for them and doing the education of really understanding where they're coming from and why. And sometimes I think people can get stuck in situations where they make excuses, to the point it's like, don't make excuses for somebody. If they're being like emotionally and mentally abusive to you, don't tolerate that, but you do need to find a way to be compassionate, because sometimes you can turn that, leniency to almost somebody just being completely abusive to you, almost like narcissistic, because, trauma can lead to those things for people, So, but that, again, that's going into a different topic. But as Black women for issues, what I realized that I've gone through was I had no idea of this thing called like imposter syndrome. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but apparently that's something that Black women struggle with greatly, is imposter syndromes, like just being in spaces that they feel like they don't deserve to be in, because basically they just don't see them, they don't see anybody else like that. And so that just causes so much anxiety and self-sabotage, where I have been 100% in a place where I'm just completely self-sabotaging myself because of the way I'm thinking. And there's nobody else in the room that's thinking that way about me, and it's just me feeling that way. And it's like, why, so just self-sabotage. And that just comes from anxiety. And there was something that I read up on where a therapist had said that for some reason, Black women, they don't default into how they're feeling when they're feeling depressed. They default that to that they're failing. We just automatically assume that we're failing and we're just not doing the things that we're supposed to be doing. And instead of realizing that, hey, like how you're feeling those are signs of depression, but that's not, like you were saying, that is not at the top of the list of what I'm going to say is going on with me. It's just like, you're just getting on yourself for, just not having it today. You wake up and you just feel the way you feel, and you automatically just want to assume that you're being lazy or just covering other things over what actually is going on. And it's huge. It's very, very huge in our society, in our community.
I think that for me, there were some things as a child that as an adult, I'm unlearning and relearning. I'm doing more unlearning than learning, actually. I'm doing lots of unlearning and then relearning afterwards, because as a young male, like most males growing up, something happened, I started to cry. My mom would say, stop crying. Suck it up.
Yep.
You're a boy. And as a man, when I had issues that affected me emotionally and mentally, I suck it up. I kept quiet. The tears stayed inside the tear duct. And now I'm learning there is power. There's empowerment in being vulnerable. There is power in speaking up. There is all the things that society and parents back then, without their knowing, maybe it was just the way it is, saying, well, it's okay for my daughter to cry, and it's okay for me to coddle and caress. Mm-hmm. But you, as a male, when you fall down and you scrape your knees, I don't even want to hear a whimper out of you. And so we have to allow young males to be expressive and let them know crying or speaking up it's okay. It's okay. It's okay to unload. Right. It makes you human. And so once you do that, you feel better already. But we raise these boys to become men who don't understand the power of being vulnerable to their girlfriend or to their wife or in work situations. When we're ill-equipped to deal with life on the whole because we don't know how to deal with it in a way that's just humanly possible, which is to be vulnerable, which is to do some introspection, which is to seek help, which is to talk to people who are close to you, friends, family members, confidant, associates. We don't do those things as men. And so we keep it in, and it affects us in such a negative way that sometimes when we realize that we need to do something, we're done. We have no fight. We have no energy. We've hit rock bottom. And it could have been so much better if we had just talked ahead of time. So I think this is important to talk about. I'm glad we got a chance to talk about it. And I think it's a conversation that needs to be had, and not just in the Black community, primarily in the Black community, but just on a whole. But on a whole, human beings have to understand it's important to, you don't have to tell the world everything, but I'm talking about people in your circle. You have a husband, you have a wife, you have a boyfriend, you have a girlfriend, and you can be vulnerable to that person, the mother of your child, of your children. How are you going to have a successful, healthy, happy, harmonious marriage and you're not vulnerable? Right. That's just not reality. And you're not speaking up. You've lost your voice and you feel like you're not entitled to a voice in the household, and you want to suffer in silence rather confronting in a healthy manner the issues at hand. Right. You can't have a successful. Nobody can make me believe that. Yeah. I just don't believe it. You could try to make me believe it, and you can act like it, but it's a mask. We're masquerading around here. And it's time that we put the mask down and start being real with each other. Exactly. No, you're so right. Like mental health, it's an everyone issue, but it's just so important for Black and Brown community to know this, because this is very foreign topics for us to even talk about or to even, converse and even kind of explore. Because again, speaking for myself, that was not the household that I was in, is even creating a space to talk about those things. I try to talk about these things to my mom right now, super close-minded, just exactly what I just told you right now, just very, Deandra, it's life and you just get over it. And she is just in this state of mind where she has been in the same point in her life for years. I can't seek advice from my mom, unfortunately, because she has never allowed herself to get out of the space that she's in mentally. So mentally, it just makes her be where she's at physically. So, she's still in the same hometown. There's nothing wrong with that. But she's just still doing the same mundane things that she does. And it's only because she has not allowed herself to free herself from things that has caused her so much turmoil and trauma. When I go visit home, I try to talk to her about some things, try to, face it in a compassionate way. And she gets very, very
mad and irate just because I'm, even trying to get her to talk about things. And, and that anger turns into complete sadness because she just doesn't even know how to approach it to begin with. And she just gets she doesn't know why I'm even saying these things. And I'm trying to educate her, like, Mom, it's okay to talk about these things, go to a therapist. She's just like, I don't know why you're saying these things because it happened and I'm over it. It doesn't affect me. I'm like, it doesn't, Right. I was like, you're still talking about the same things that happened before I was born, and you're still talking about these things. You're still stuck on these things.
As if it happened yesterday.
Right. And she has been saying the same things to me since I was about 10 years old, just things that have happened to her until this day. I will go home and she's still talking about the same resentment that she has for almost, everything that has happened in her life. And I'm like, you need to let that go. But apparently she has, right? So it's very upsetting to see the people that you love, not wanting to take those things, or they kind of take your words for just combative. And it's very sad. So it's a very uncommon topic, and that was just an example that I want to paint for that. Is that how uncommon it is, especially for the older generation. I feel like, coming into now, but these are more topics, or these are conversations that I feel like we need to normalize in our community. And we need to make awareness that it's okay. It is completely okay to have these conversations. And of course, just inch at it, one conversation at a time. It doesn't have to be, spilling your heart out all in one conversation, right? Or one session. But I think some things that could help people out at first, if you don't want to talk about it with people initially, get some books that will help you kind of, lead into that. Watch some YouTube videos that will kind of get your mind going on the right corrective actions for you. If you don't want to communicate that with people, at least initially, right? So just one thing, one grain, one crumb can lead to other things. So I think that's how people can, really get into helping themselves. Because that's what happened with me. One video, one podcast led to a book. That led to other resources, that led to me finding, therapy apps and, communication services where I could utilize. So right. That's what I genuinely feel like people can just do on their own time and do that. There's games. There's actually a game that I really, really enjoy that kind of gets into learning people, kind of like what you were saying earlier about but how are you really doing? It's called We're Not Really Strangers. Okay. It's actually from the Red Table Talk with Jada
Pinkett Smith.
Yeah, so that game is awesome. I've had some really, really great conversations with some friends where I was like, where you get to the point where I didn't know that I was just being so surface level with you before, like it gets you really talking about some things because it asks those leading questions. There's like one example is one is like, so when someone, asks you, how are you? How many times are you like honest with that answer? So it just starts segueing into a lot of different things. So it's really good. I'm not promoting that. I'm not getting paid for that, but it's, right. It's a game that has really, I thought it's great. I love playing it with people, and even people that you're just meeting. It's a great game to play. So,
and what is it called again?
It's called We're Not Really Strangers. Okay. So you would just look it up that way, we're not really strangers.com, and the game will show up and it'll tell you, like expansion packs. And I think there's like one for like actual relationships and stuff. But overall, it's just for friends. It's better to play one-on-one with people, but I think it can expand out to about 6 people in a group to play like in one session. It's awesome.
Okay. One quick point and then I'll move on real quick. When people talk about older generation, well, our grandparents stayed together for 30, 40 years, or they stayed on the job for 50 years. I want to know I want to know how many of them were happy in that marriage you could tell me until you're black and blue in the face that they were together for 60 years. If those were 60 miserable years, and I'm sure not everybody who's together for 60 years were miserable, but I want to know the numbers who were truly happy and the ones who just stayed together just because it's what they did. They just stayed in jobs that weren't the best, and they just stayed in relationships and marriages that weren't the best because that's what they did back then. I am saying I'm not staying in anything. I'm not staying in anything where I feel like I'm being treated less than. I'm not, and there's ebb and flow. Not every relationship is going to be happy, harmonious all the time. But I'm just about in general. I'm in a situation where I'm growing constantly, and I have the support, and it's healthy and happy overall, despite what we go through, and even the bad times, we deal with it appropriately, and then we grow from it. That's the situations I want to be in life. I'm not just being with people just to say I'm with you and keep my mouth shut. And that's how I got into the flame out situation, because I was in situations where I wasn't happy. I wasn't thriving. I wasn't flourishing. I wasn't being true to myself. Yep. I was lying to people, making them feel like everything is okay with me, and it wasn't. That's not the way not talking about anybody else, I want to live my life.
Exactly. No, that's a beautiful point that you just made about a lot of people love to make that argument. And I just want to think to myself, do you know your grandparents' story? Like, do you know your grandparents', relational story of, what happened? Because I know mine. And, this is on my mom's side of the family, which was a huge reason as to why, things are so messed up was, my grandpa, he was a cheater. And my grandma, and even as a little kid, I asked my mom this. I was like, well, Mom, why didn't grandma just leave? And she's like, Deandra, she couldn't. And I just didn't comprehend. I'm like, what do you mean she couldn't? That doesn't make no sense. And, at the time, economically, too, it was very hard to do those things.
Right.
And so and in the family, because it's like, well, what was she going to do? Where was she going to go? She has kids. He's a lot of the times, the husband, he's the breadwinner in the family. It's like, a lot of women, they weren't really working like that. A lot of the times, especially, and I guess, it just depends on what culture you kind of grew up in too. Right. So that's kind of what her situation was. She just kind of, a lot of women just ended up dealing what they had to deal with because they were essentially, that was just the situation that they were stuck in. It wasn't so easy to just get up and leave, especially financially, Right. So a lot of our grandparents stuck it out for the sake of just sticking it out, not because of they were happy in what they were in. Absolutely not.
Right.
Again,
they didn't have a choice.
Exactly. Especially the way things were set up back then. The people were not financially set up that way, especially women. So when their mans were cheating and just doing things that, they had to stick it out, then that was the mentality. It wasn't, taught to them to think anything else, Right. Divorce was taboo back then.
That's right.
Divorce was very taboo. It was not encouraged at all. So yeah, that's a big thing. I really want people to, if that's how they think, I really encourage them to probably find out the history of the relationships of their grandparents or great grandparents.
Do the history like we talked about in the beginning.
Yep, 100%.
Okay, I'm going to end it on this, Deandra. The N word. Should Black people say it in public or just in private?
I don't think it should be something that's encouraged at all. I think why it's, a thing now, it's because it's just so like instilled in us because of whatever our history is. But I feel like using the N word is just one of those power moves that like an example would be, I think like a female rappers, how they like to use the B word and kind of like what's used in rap music to derogate to, derogatize women.
Mhm.
That's basically, I feel like, what we're doing as Black people for the N-word. So how female rappers kind of flipped how rappers kind of talked about women.
Gotcha. Right.
I feel like that's kind of how they flipped it. So female rappers now, they took the power back in the in the B word. They took the power back in what being called hoes and just being used for sexual acts. Like a lot of rappers, female rappers, took that power back and they rap about that stuff. Like they talk about how they own that and how that has power over them now, or the male rappers kind of thing. So that's kind of how I think about the N-word, is that I think that was just a coping mechanism that derived from that, was just taking the power back from what was used to hurt us to now utilize it to that it's just this word that we're now empowered by. So that's just kind of how I think about it. I really, would hope that at some point this just kind of fades out throughout time, of people just getting more educated and realizing that that word is not okay. I mean, and I think it just depends on how you look at things too. People just have really, really cool ways of thinking. So people are just like, it's just a word, it's just language. It doesn't mean anything if you don't make it anything, kind of thing. So I'm like, well, it's just on you, right? So.
Well, I'm big on daily affirmation, right?
Mm.
And if I say in the mirror every day for the next year, Rem, you're confident, you're smart, you're strong, you are a king, you can accomplish anything in life. What do you think will happen eventually in my life?
You're going to amount to those words that you were speaking over yourself.
If I listen to the number one genre in America, which is hip hop, and movies where the N-word is just every day, I'm listening to it. As a Black man, what do you think is going to, how do you think I'm going to internalize that? I'm a king?
You're going to believe that?
As a Black man, as a white person, what are you going to think about Black people listening to that every single day when you listen to the most popular songs being played on streaming services and in the radio, and you watch movies about it? How are you going to look at a white person, at a Black person?
They're going to be like, they don't respect themselves, so why the heck am I going to respect them?
And that's my entire whole point. In private, sure, I have no problem saying that in private, in my private domain. Mm-hmm. But once it's out in the public domain, it is unfair to white people to put out products, music, movies, books, where that word is just replete and fraught with the N-word, and then turn around and say, you better not say it. That doesn't make sense to me.
Right. And even then, honestly, to go even deeper on that, what you do behind closed doors, that's going to be thrived throughout your life. So it's, even if you just kind of want to be like, don't be that person or don't do those things outwardly, that if that's the case, don't do it privately, because it's just what stays in the dark always comes to light. And that's literally with anything that you do in life, that's in anything to the smallest point. So, and people can really tell what you do behind closed doors, it's just fruitful, it's just kind of like gaining weight, right? People don't see the cupcakes and fried chicken that you've been having, but at some point we're going to notice that something had caught up to you where you gained all that weight, so.
Oh, you talking about white people using it in private?
Oh no, I'm talking about Black people.
Okay.
I just say, like, I just feel like if that's the standard you're going to set for yourself, is don't say it.
Don't say it. Period.
Don't say it. Period. Then,
I get it. I don't know. That's a strong stance, but you're right. It's not helping. I mean, I could say
challenging. It's challenging 100%.
Yeah, because it's a term of endearment, and I don't use it that often, even in my close circle. But when I say it, it's a term of endearment. When I put it out there in the public sphere, it's up for people can take it any way they want to, and not everybody should be allowed to do that. And so, if I know not everybody can take it because they're not going to interpret it the way it should be interpreted, then why am I saying it out in public? That doesn't make any sense. I'm kind of setting people up for failure. Like I'm setting you up to for you to say it and get it. You know what I mean? So, okay, I will think about that. Maybe I should just omit it from my vocabulary altogether. Like it doesn't really. And I started doing that. I started using king to address more so than, because I think king is fitting. I think if I address you as king and you address me as king, we're going to have king ways and attributes and mindsets about ourselves, and it will trickle down into appearance and attitude and perspective. So,
100%. I completely agree with that. But yeah, that was a really, really good question, because it is honestly it's a little tough, especially in the Black community, because it's just like, you know, because that's just that's how we communicate. That's how we, you know. That's how we go about our way of just who we are in our culture, right? But ultimately, it's just, if we want better, we got to do better, you know.
But when I look at other cultures and I think about if they had their word that America on the whole looked at as a slur, and they used it every time they put out music or movies or anything in the creative arts and media.
Right.
I don't know if I'm going to have a hard time not saying it, because I'm hearing it so much, and that's how the mind works. Right. That's why I went to daily affirmation.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, because I'm not around these communities, but I really can't imagine that Jewish people are behind closed doors calling each other kikes, you know,
no.
or anything like that. Or, I mean, they may, but in that derogatory way, though, you know, if they're arguing and you want to, you know, hurt somebody, they may just do that. Or Japanese calling, you know, them Jap, you know, like crazy stuff like that. So,
and they're definitely not putting it out there in the public domain. I know that for a fact.
100%.
So why are we doing it?
Boom. You know, that's so right.
So I'm at the end. Is there anything that you want to say before we conclude? This was a great interview, and I really appreciate everything you had to say and coming on here today. Is there anything you want to leave the viewership with?
No, I really want to thank you, Remington, for, you know, just keeping in touch with me, and, you know, we're able to do this, but I really appreciate, anyone who this reaches out to. And, if this just helps one person, then I feel like I, you know, did my due diligence of, you know, just sharing my story. And yeah, just again, if there's anything that you want to look into as far as all the topics that we discussed, I'd highly encourage that you go ahead and do that. And just, again, be unbiased, be unemotional, for all of the things that we have discussed here, and just be open-minded. And yeah, that's really all I got. I appreciate it.
I'm glad you said that. I wanted to get into the emotional part, but I won't. I'll save that for another. Hey, we're going to keep in touch, and this is not going to be the last podcast. Unemotional, and right now we're so emotional about everything. So when you said unemotional, unbiased,
it's challenging.
We're so emotional about everything. And I don't think everything has to have emotions behind it. And I think that's why we have the hard time with the discourse. When you said you can't come to the table with a label, because already people, and I think that's a lot of that is feeling. A lot of that is emotion. You're just emotional for no reason. Just because I said something or I'm labeled something different, you're just emotional now. You can't even think straight. You don't even want to hear what I have to say. You just kind of, and I just wish we were just a little bit emotion is good, and I'm a person.
It's what makes us human. Absolutely.
Right. It's good, and I can get really emotional and passionate. I gotta sometimes bring it down a notch. But when it comes to certain things, not everything is now emotional. And I think once again, this "I'm offended" thing. I don't think anything is wrong with being offended.
Nope.
And to me, that only birthed more conversations, constructive conversations moving forward. I don't want to live in a world where I am so comfortable and so complacent and so content that I never want to be offended ever in my life. That's dangerous.
Very dangerous.
That is dangerous. So when you said it earlier, I wanted to bring it up, and I forgot that point about emotions. But
that's
we could, like I said, if you're willing to come back on at some later time, we can go over that emotional part. That's a whole other.
Yeah, I think there's so many different things that we could segue off of, because those are their own conversations on its own. So yeah, I would definitely love to come back and expand on more on that with you, for sure.
Well, like I said, we're going to keep in touch, and all the best to you in Austin and everything that you do. Wish you much success and all the best. And thanks again for being a guest on the Obsessively Outspoken Podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. All right, Deandra, take care. All right. Bye-bye.